It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Welcome back into Sports Talk, everybody. Here on a Wednesday night, it's good to have you with us as we come to you from our studios, Main Street, downtown Columbia. The temperatures are getting a little bit cooler. It's finally feeling like football weather out there in South Carolina. Let's play some football this weekend. Clemson, NC State, highlighting the breakdown of the football games across the states. It's a huge matchup nationally in terms of two top 20 teams. A tremendous matchup in the ACC. First time since 2013. We've got two ACC teams undefeated through 5 games playing each other. So it should be a big, big day at Death Valley. It's homecoming for the Tigers. Going to be a lot of fun taking in that ball game. We'll talk about it tonight. Also, we'll check out what else is happening around the state of South Carolina this weekend in college football. We'll have the M&M boys with us in hour number 2, get their thoughts on South Carolina's loss to Texas A&M and what's coming up for Clemson. We'll hear more from Dabo Swinney. We will get to the Will Muschamp comments as well from the other day, and SEC Basketball Media Day today in Birmingham, Alabama. Frank Martin was there holding court, as were all the other head basketball coaches and some players from each of the league's teams. And the Gamecocks in the preseason poll by the media, they are picked 11th, with Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida your top 5. It's a pretty cyclical thing, except for Kentucky in SEC basketball. Remember, just a few years ago, Tennessee was at the bottom and South Carolina was near the top. Mm-hmm. Now you see Tennessee's near the top, Auburn's near the top. You've got South Carolina down, A&M is down, Ole Miss is picked last. These were all teams, guys, just a few years ago. You look at the preseason poll, they were ranked near the top.
I find it ironic, Corn, that while South Carolina is picked 11th, the same place where they finished last year, ironically, at 7-11 in the league, 17-16 overall, they are the only team in the bottom 4 or 5, other than Arkansas, to have a player on the All-SEC team, which, of course, Arkansas has with Daniel Gafford and South Carolina has with Chris Silva. I find that interesting, and the fact that even though South Carolina does return probably one of the most dominant defensive players in the conference, the league's media still does not think highly enough of South Carolina and the way they finished the season for them to make a jump off. And I still think that they're in a process of trying to build. I want to say rebuild, because so much of what that team that went to the Final Four Pro was already a built entity, and now they have to kind of pick up the pieces and learn from there.
Yeah, but one of the things I find about the SEC is teams that usually you lean toward the bottom, but they have some veteran talent. They tend to, after the first 3 weeks, boy, this team really is a surprise, because nobody knows what's going to happen. For me, I think where Alabama is placed, they must think their super guard is still there. He's in Cleveland.
True.
Yeah, but they've got Tevin Mack available. He's eligible this year.
How did that help Texas?
Well, I don't know if you can blame him. He was a young kid at Texas. I think everybody agrees that Tevin Mack can fill it up. You know, you give him an opening, you can fill it up. While we're talking basketball, we're going to get to football in a little bit. I want to talk basketball here for a moment while we're on the subject, because, of course, the subject of the FBI probe of college basketball came up in Birmingham. It'll come up in Charlotte next week when the ACC coaches get together, and well, it should. I need to apologize to Frank Martin and Brad Brownell. You know, I've been critical of their in-state recruiting, and not giving them a pass on everybody, but with the latest revelations about Zion Williamson and the testimony in the court case that allegedly his stepfather, Lee Anderson, was shopping the kid to Kansas in particular, and who knows who else he was shopping him to. You probably have all seen the testimony. You know what I'm talking about. He was shopping the kid for himself, and that apparently, according to the testimony, he was looking for some work, looking for a job. He was looking for money. He was looking for housing. So me in particular, hammered Brad Brownell and Frank Martin for letting this guy, get out of state, knowing it's tough to keep the number 1 player in the country, number 2 player in the country in basketball in the state of South Carolina. However, what this tells me is these 2 guys weren't for sale, and these 2 guys weren't buying. Frank Martin wasn't going to get involved in something along these lines, and neither was Brad Brownell. So what it tells me is that they run an above-board operation. They recruit legally and cleanly, and do not allow themselves or their assistants to get their hands dirty with these sort of shenanigans. So in the case of Zion Williamson, when it certainly looked like he was going to go to Clemson, and it really surprised everybody when he picked Duke, just like when Brian Bowen surprised everybody and he picked Louisville.
And DeAndre Ayton surprised everybody and picked Arizona.
And now we know why. Now, we don't know of anything under the table between Duke and Williamson and Lee Anderson. Who knows?
No, there's nothing going on at Duke. This is all just a blip on the radar, according to Mike Krzyzewski.
So my point is, what I'm saying is, we here in South Carolina, we're fortunate that we've got basketball coaches at South Carolina, at Clemson, based on this and the way I read it, who won't do that, who won't stoop to that level to try to even get the best player in the country who's in your backyard. They cannot be bought.
Well, between Pro and I'll speak for the 2 of us. This didn't necessarily open my eyes, and it's not necessarily because I didn't think that Zion Williamson was above taking any money from Duke, but we all know the way the back channels of these college basketball programs and the recruiting of this is all gone. There's always been the, wink, wink, nod, nod, nudge, nudge, here, there, here's a bag of money, here's this and that, here, and everything like that. I'm just sitting here and I'm wondering, how is it possible that all of these schools, all of these same 4, 5, 6 schools are always in the mix? There has to be something going on underneath. And the thing that I've been saying all week with you guys, somebody's going to have to take the fall and is going to have to bring the entirety of the college basketball establishment down with him. That is the only way this is going to change, because I see no way that it does, even with all the stuff that's being exposed in New York.
Not only when you look at a Frank Martin or Brad Brownell, you look at other coaches around the country, and Mark Fox being one. These guys can coach.
Yeah.
why can't a player figure out that, this guy's going to make me better or so on? So why can't these guys get these players? And then now we find out that, okay, well, you're at a poker table and the chips are stacked against you.
But I'm going to say this. I also blame Frank Martin and Brad Brownell and Mark Fox because they know what's going on, but they won't blow the whistle. They won't blow the whistle on Bill Self. They won't blow the whistle on Krzyzewski if something's going on. They won't blow the whistle on Roy Williams.
Because they'll be shunned in the community.
Well, like you said, if it's got to come down, it's got to come down from the inside.
Right.
And people who are doing it right have got to have the backbone to stand up and say, if they have the facts, and you better have the facts, and you be able to you got to be able to support it and prove it, but you got to be willing to step up and say, he's cheating.
No,
and I'm not going to let this happen any longer. It hurts my sport. It hurts my team because I can't get a guy who I've recruited fairly and above board because you and your shoe company and your associates took him away under the table.
Well, the shoe companies are a necessary evil for one, so you're not going to want to alienate yourself to them on that one hand. And on the second hand, if you go out and you step out of line, then you are blackballed in the industry.
But if you know it, okay, you got to look at the bigger picture. It's about the game of basketball. It's about the game of college basketball. And if you're an above-board coach, but you know coach here and coach here and coach here are cheating, and the shoe company here and the shoe company there are conspiratorial in this involvement, and you stay silent, you're as culpable as they are to some degree because you are allowing it to happen. And now you want to point fingers and say this, that, and the other, but you allowed it to get to this point.
Well, also you got to remember that ADs and presidents got to this point too because they fire good coaches because they can't get players, they can't win. And so they're culpable. But the key point is nobody wants to be, and I know I'm aging myself, but I'll drop the name. Nobody wants to be Curt Flood. No one.
Yeah. Ruined his career.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
All right, 800-956-7266. We'll be back with more in a moment. Going to get into that Clemson-NC State game and your phone calls coming up.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
800-956-7266. More on the NCAA trial. Should coaches stand up and be the whistleblowers on this thing, or should somebody on the inside have to be the one to take the fall? We ask you to vote in our poll question on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, and on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. The spread opening the week between Clemson and NC State was 17 in favor of the Tigers. Does Clemson cover that spread? 39% of you surveyed say yes. 61% say no. We can now point to you evidence from the last 2 years as Clemson has not covered the last two against NC State, despite the fact that they did win outright.
Yeah, I think they cover. A couple of things about NC State. We'll get to your phone calls here in a second. I think they cover. NC State's got a good-looking offense. Finley's a good-looking quarterback. He can make the throws, as Dabo said yesterday. Got a strong arm, moves around pretty well. It's got some very impressive receivers. Harmon and Myers they're strong, physical receivers. Got a couple of nice-looking running backs. Gillespie is a good running back, and now they're getting Ricky Person back healthy, and he's able to get some carries as well. But they are a fraud. They haven't played anybody like Clemson. When there's a good offense going up against Clemson's defense, I think it gets nullified. Now, the other side of that is I know the State's numbers defensively look pretty impressive against the run, but they're not going to be able to slow down Clemson's running game, and that's going to open things up for Lawrence. I look for Clemson to roll in this thing. I'm telling you, it's mid-October. They smell postseason now. They got a break this past weekend with a couple of teams losing. They realize, take care of business, they're going to be fine in terms of the playoffs. It's put the hammer down time for Clemson. They're going to roll NC State.
I still don't think that Clemson's secondary has responded to a good enough challenge from a legit enough quarterback. And my thoughts are that Ryan Finley is the best quarterback that they're going to see all year. He's an NFL-ready guy. He's got weapons. I think too much of their offense ran through one person last year. They're a more diverse offense. And the one thing that I think they know they can do is they can beat Clemson deep, the way that Syracuse did and the way Texas A&M did. Kellen Mond did not look like the Kellen Mond we saw against Clemson when we saw him against South Carolina, did it, Corn? He did not. Well, because Clemson's secondary was faulty and still a tad askew.
Kellen Mond might be next year a Heisman candidate in that offense, the way he's progressed from last year.
But he still didn't look like as good a passer as he did against Clemson when he played against South Carolina.
Well, because, I mean, he ran the ball pretty well against South Carolina. They ran the ball better against South Carolina than they did against Clemson. You're right. He did light up Clemson's secondary. Second game of the season. I think if there is one area going into this game that you have to be concerned about from a Clemson standpoint is how well will the secondary stack up.
And they haven't
passing game.
Haven't done it against two legit quarterbacks this year.
But they're going to have pressure on this guy. He wears a knee brace. He moves around okay, but he's in a knee brace. That hampers him some. I got to believe Clemson's rush is going to put a lot of pressure on him. They had 4 turnovers against Boston College, okay? So they're a little loose with the football too. Clemson's going to roll this thing.
Well, history tells me no matter who is playing where, this is usually a shootout, and it's closer than we think it's going to be. And I think the biggest weapon that North Carolina State has is that little guy standing on the sideline with a clipboard named Drinkwitz with glasses on. Because for whatever reason, Clemson's defense, even when they're at full strength, when they had a great secondary last year, he picked them apart. Their quarterback did. But the thing that worries me is at some point in this season, the absence of those 4 defensive linemen that the Wolfpack had last year has to show up at some point. It hasn't already, but I still am worried that this still is going to be a shootout, and Clemson is going to be in that 17 to 10 point range, but still win the football.
The one salvo from Clemson's standpoint of why I think they'll cover is I think that they'll be able to score at will against NC State.
To the phones, 800-956-7266 is the number. Love to hear from you here over the next few minutes. By the way, this is an SC Wild night here on Sports Talk, so I know the fans of Captain Billy Downer are happy to hear that. They are preparing for their 7:30 meeting with him here over the airwaves.
Duck hunt.
Cody in Mount Pleasant. Welcome into Sports Talk. How are you?
Hey, doing well, thanks. Got another question for you.
Uh-huh.
So, I really think J.C. Horn has played pretty well for a freshman. I think he's going to be good for the next couple of years. But I had a couple questions about some of the other guys. I don't know if y'all have got more insight on this than what I've seen. But I remember last year, before the season started, there was a lot of talk about Jalen Dixon, I believe it was, and then he was out for the season.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was supposed to be a pretty good freshman safety last year. And then the guy that transferred in from A&M, Harvey, I feel like I haven't seen started for them for a couple of years. So I'll hang up and listen, but I just want to see if you guys have heard anything about those two guys.
Dickerson had the injury, came back this year, and had another injury. I think it was his hamstring that was hurting him earlier, but he's cleared to play. He just has not gotten back on the field.
He missed a lot of fall practice time, and the one thing that Will Muschamp has said is that is the hardest thing to kind of get back from. It's easy to miss in-season practice time. If you've gone through all the fall stuff, he's still limited in what he can do in their defense.
And Nick Harvey is damaged right now as well. He's been out, and they do miss him because they've had to shuffle some things around in their secondary to make up for the losses of those guys. They did get Charleston back off of his suspension. That has helped. They've lost Corey Banks, who's now transferring out. So that's another defensive back who is out. Right now they're rolling with Fenton and Nixon and Horn and Mukwamu at your corners. And now Montauk and now eBay's been out as well. Jamias Williams has been banged up as well. Harvey's been out. So you got Montauk, you've got Roderick, you have got the Jamias Williams when healthy in there playing some safety as well. They're a little bit thin back there.
Yeah, basically they went into Saturday's game with only 12 defensive backs who dressed. You had Harvey, who was in concussion protocol, eBay, who was out, and amongst the guys who were playing, a guy like R.J. Roderick got more playing time than I think we probably expected him to see earlier this season. I feel like the defensive back room kind of reminds me a little bit of the way the offensive line looked last year. Was the offensive line went through periods of time where they were down 3 to 4 defensive linemen at a time, and now that's where the defensive backs are.
See, I hate to say this, but for every little good luck you have, there's some bad luck coming. Remember in South Carolina when Muschamp first got here, it looked like he had 4 healthy defensive backs every game, but they barely got banged up. And now that he thought he had a lot more defensive backs, now they're getting injured by the bushel basket.
We go to Hank in Columbia next with us here on Sports Talk. Howdy, Hank.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, y'all hit on it. A lot of them have just kind of been injured, and they had to do a lot of shuffling. So, I think the defense will come together as they get healthy and get few back in the right places. I want to talk about the basketball thing, though. Frank can't be the one. Frank or Barnell can't be the one that blows the whistle for him. It has to either be somebody from inside those organizations, or it has to be someone like a Patino, because the schools that seem like are in the play with these big ones are basically considered the blue blood schools. And so schools that are not a blue blood school, well, when you go and cry foul, everybody just says, oh, no, shut it. It's not like you were going to beat Duke or North Carolina out for a player. So it's not going to be taken with the same vein. Because if you remember this, Corn, remember the guy that transferred from Carolina before Frank got here, in the interim between Frank getting here and Horn leaving? Was it DeMontre Harris?
Gosh, that's going back a lot of transfers.
That Demetrius Henry.
But he's right, though.
I'm talking about, it was DeMontre Harris,
okay.
the big center kid that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And when he got ready to leave, if you remember, he first put out he wanted to go to NC State, and Frank never came out and said it. But remember, Frank said somebody would have to step up because there was an indication that the guy that they named in the court thing the other day, what was the guy named?
Orlando Early.
The guy Orlando Early had done some.
All right, hang on, Hank. We got to hit a quick break. We'll come back, let you finish up in just a moment. Sports Talk on a Wednesday night from Columbia.
On Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, we're going to hear from Will Muschamp on his comments about South Carolina's open week in just a moment. More from Dabo Swinney on the offensive efficiency of the Tigers, and also a little bit from Frank Martin in our second hour as we get you ready for the SEC basketball season. We'll be at ACC Basketball Media Days a week from today in Charlotte, talking with Brad Brownell and distinguished others about that in the home of the Charlotte Hornets. I still think if you're going to take this thing down, it's got to come like the mob. Someone on the inside is going to have to go rogue and basically step out of the family and basically say, hey, guess what? I got all the receipts. I got everybody.
Yeah.
You want Selfs? I got Selfs. You want Krzyzewski's? I got Krzyzewski's. You want Roy's? I got Roy's. That's what's going to have to happen.
I think what's pissed people off, I know it has me, and I got no dog in the fight. I'm just a fan, and I'm just a media member, but I think it pissed people off. The arrogant attitude that Williams and Krzyzewski expressed at their press conferences about this whole deal.
Ain't gonna be able to hide next week.
Because it stands to reason that there's a small cluster of blue blood schools. They all eat up the same group of players every year. They're the ones that are primarily in the mix. Occasionally, you're going to see one of these top 15 players have, some school outside of the group, maybe a Creighton or maybe a South Carolina or Clemson occasionally, like Josiah James. And by the way, I wanted to say, Josiah James would be one of those in that group of talent where you would think there might be something going on. He ends up going to Tennessee. But I would say that no one down there with his AAU organization, and certainly with the family and people I've talked to, his coaches, people down there, absolutely straight shooters. Nobody suspects anything under the table when it came to his recruiting process. I know it broke Clemson's heart that they didn't get him either, but nobody suspects anything with Rick Barnes or Tennessee at all when it comes to that situation. And to be honest with you, I mean, I was a little bit surprised about the Williamson thing coming up because it had never really been talked about until it came out in the trial. I mean, nobody has said anything about Zion Williamson and his father publicly or even in whispers that they were out there with their hand out looking for something, one or both. And to me, it was a little bit of a surprise when that came out in the trial the other day.
What were you talking about during the break about Eddie Fogler? Our friends from KSX in Johnston asking us to want to hear what Eddie Fogler would think about the information, or maybe Dave Odom or other former coaches.
Eddie Fogler was one who he had the stage and he had the power to do something and say something, and he almost did. He called out Billy Donovan and what he thought was shenanigans at Florida, but he would not. Like you said, he would not take that step. He would not try and throw that knockout punch. He would not go out on a limb by himself and try and shake that tree. But he did bring attention to it one time at SEC Media Day. Since then, of course, he and Donovan have made up and things have moved on. But he was one guy because Eddie Fogler back in his coaching day was above reproach. And he enjoyed picking fights with coaches he thought cheated, but he would not take them down when he had a chance.
But here's the difference between that and this is that you now have something with the subpoena power of the FBI. And for the record, I think the FBI and these guys are basically kind of going against where the FBI is trying to basically jurisdict this. The FBI is trying to allege that these guys defrauded these universities, and their defense is basically, we didn't defraud the universities. We were working in concert with the universities.
Isn't that weird?
So the problem is these guys are going to walk because they're basically saying, look, we've got the receipts. This is the difference between just saying, oh, well, these guys are cheating. We actually have the receipts. We have the text messages. Right. We have all the information in front of us because nobody with the subpoena power of the FBI has ever at least tried to uncover this, at least to this point.
Their argument is, the schools are involved with this as much as we are. The schools that we're talking about.
The schools are reaching out to us.
I don't know. You say these guys are going to walk. Remember, there are more trials to come. This is just the first trial.
Right.
You still have the assistant coaches who are going to go on trial.
Well, the coaches are the ones
that is really going to expose
the coaches are probably in trouble.
More of the underbelly.
The coaches are probably more in trouble than the shoe company guys. The shoe company guys are probably going to walk. The Merle Codes and the Gasnolas, those guys are going to get off scot-free.
Well,
especially because they also exchanged immunity for their testimony.
Let's face it now. You have to look at how this organization is built. The money is accumulated, and we have to go back to the old line again that was done during the economic crash we had, and that is banks were caught doing things. What did they do? Let's help you out a little bit here.
Bailout.
Too big to fail. And some people are just afraid.
Well,
because they think the whole house will come down if they pull out of certain boards that's sitting there.
real quick, I want to mention this too. You know, Charleston Southern got its news from the NCAA yesterday about its investigation. It was hit with a 2-year probation, loss of football scholarships. They failed to monitor the athletic program. This goes back to the bookstore and players spending their money not on books but on other things. That's part of it. They lose 6 scholarships. They were fined $5,000. Meantime, you got the University of North Carolina, where athletes, as part of the student body, part of the student body, athletes could go to fake classes and get fake grades and stay academically eligible with fake GPAs. And not a damn thing has been done by the university or by the NCAA. But poor little old Charleston Southern, one of the smallest Division I schools out there, they have some players go into the campus bookstore and use their book money to buy candy, some electronics. It didn't all go to books. We can't have that happen, not in our world of amateurism. And we, being the almighty powerful NCAA, we're going to take Charleston Southern down because it is a rogue operation there at Charleston Southern.
Far be it for me to defend the NCAA, the indefensible NCAA, but like I said, it was more than that. There was some, I would say, their compliance department, I guess, let in some students allegedly.
Yeah, there were other things involved. They had
some skating of the rules when it comes to qualification of
compliance department.
Certain athletes.
I think they might have one compliance person there.
Well, I think that's part of the issue is that they're saying you need to go and hire more people.
Charleston Southern. I mean, please, it's it's Charleston Southern, a school of about 1,500 people.
I'm not saying
it used to be called Baptist College. Okay,
I understand.
It's the home of Warren Pepper, for crying out loud.
I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying that you're incorrect. But I'm saying it goes more. It's more than this.
So they have investigated Charleston Southern and found wrongdoing. Yet they refused. The infractions committee said North Carolina situation. That's not in our. That is not something that we can get involved with. It's outside of our bounds.
I just try to visualize the NCAA, and I'll put it in this context. You go to the playground.
Women's team took the hit, according to Twitter.
You go to the playground and find the smallest kid in the playground, and you beat him up. That's what you do.
Let's go back to Hank real quick. He's been holding. We've almost eaten up this entire segment. Hank, sorry about that. We got people here that can't shut up. Your humble host included.
Yeah, if you go back to when DeMontre Harris came out, remember he was, and this is how other coaches that try to do it right get looked at. Remember Frank refused to allow him to go to NC State, and people were just, oh man, Frank.
I remember that now. Yeah,
not even his player.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah, remember they were like, oh, it's not his player, and oh, this is just so vindictive about an old guy and whatever. And then remember Frank said, I'll let him go to NC State if they say how he was contacted. If they stated how he was contacted and who contacted him. And it was all about the early guy who turns out to be the bag man for a lot of programs, and that was about as much as he could do to protest. And remember NC State just finally said, oh, no, we just won't take him. And the kid went to Florida.
Yep.
So
you're right.
Every family knows these, that's about what Frank could do.
Yeah.
And he did it. And everybody knew NC State must have thought they were wrong with something because this kid was really good, but they dropped him like a bad habit when Frank said if they'll state how they got him, then I'll let him go.
All right.
And they let him go. So,
we got to go. You got to let us go, or we're going to have to turn you in. Thank you. Well, I was reading a story in the Raleigh paper, and they just hammered Mark Gottfried.
Oh yeah,
because in Kay Yao and how she just let this thing happen under her watch because she hired Mark Gottfried after not getting who she originally wanted and basically turned him loose and said with Adidas money and said go get it done.
Gottfried was an assistant under who at UCLA? Jim Harris.
Oh,
That should tell you something.
That's something dirty about him.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Recruiting coming up, a little bit from Dabo Sweeney. We'll have a little bit from Frank Martin from Birmingham in the second hour. Also, the M&M boys, Corey Miller and Will Merritt, hashtag scheduled to appear.
Mm-hmm.
Subject to change without notice or cancellation.
Hold your breath on Will. Though he tells us he's going to be with us tonight.
We're hoping the 2 tin cans and the string that we installed from Will's place up in the hills down to here works.
To Clark in Greenwood, and then to Dabo at Clemson. Stand by, Dabo. Don't go anywhere. Clark, what's up?
Evening, guys.
Hey.
I think with North Carolina State this week, Clemson's defensive line I think the biggest thing about Clemson is the depth on the offense and the defense. And, you know, lately I've been watching a few of the Clemson games, some reruns, but their linebacking core has gotten a lot better with their depth lately. A lot of the second and third string guys have, you know, gotten a lot of reps. And on the offensive side, I believe Sweeney or whoever the coordinator is, like the offensive line coach, has really got in their face and said, look here, I want some offensive linemen that's going to be nasty. You know, I want to get that back. And, you know, I think that's – and rotating guys on the offensive line, I think that's helped Clemson out a lot. And, you know, they got guys that can play multiple spots on that offensive line. And I think that's going to help them out in the long run. But I just want to get your take on that.
Well, I think that their offensive line has been, in terms of the personnel, pretty solid from left to right, except for that one guard spot, the right guard spot, where, you know, Sean Pollard's been in there some. Gage Cervenka's been in there. He's also been in there.
They liked Cervenka.
Well, they should. I mean, the guy was a state championship wrestler. He's got what you want as an offensive lineman. They'll be facing basically a pretty new defensive front because NC State lost so many players. One of the starters for this will be kind of interesting. One of the starters for State on the defensive lines, their nose tackle, Erndrus Bryant, out of Fort Dorchester. His teammate was John Simpson. They're going to be butting heads, I'm sure, throughout the day. Darian Roseborough is back at a defensive end. He's a good player. He's a holdover from last year. But they got a lot of new names and new faces on that defense at State, and they really haven't been challenged. You know, they faced Boston College 2 weeks ago, and BC was without the star running back Dillon. Didn't have to face him. They haven't faced a team like Clemson yet, so I think they're going to get their comeuppance here against the Tigers Saturday. I fully feel that in my veins.
Listen, if there's one thing I know about offensive linemen, and I didn't play at nearly the level of the guys that you're going to see on Saturday play, but I played a little bit. The one thing I know about offensive linemen, shut up. The one thing I know about offensive linemen is that they love to run block. They love to run block more than they love to pass block. They would much rather fire off the ball at full speed and block somebody with a full head start. They would rather do it with a full head of steam than have to sit back in a pass set and have to try and watch some guy try to run around them. So from that standpoint, Clemson has become motivated by their ability to run the football, and it's dealt to a lot of offensive efficiency for Dabo Swinney and Clemson. It's not only affected their running backs, but also their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, as they've had a lot more offensive efficiency through the first 6 games of the season.
That's why he played 4 quarters. They're not going to – I mean, I've been a part of games where we got off to a fast start and then we stunk the finish. So, you know, we just want to win the game. I mean, we want to go out and score every possession. There's for sure, no doubt we want to score every time we get the ball. But, you know, sometimes early parts of the game, you're trying to get some information. You're trying to learn some things and settle into a game. And we've just had a few miscues here or there, but at the end of the day, I think we're one of the best offenses in the country. Running the ball really well. We're throwing the ball really well. And, you know, statistically, everything points to that. We've just got to be a little more efficient in certain areas, whether it's a penalty or execution, you know, whatever it may be. But our job is to give these guys a chance to be successful. And, you know, we're going to continue to do everything we can to make that happen.
You mentioned the efficiency, the desire for efficiency on offense. Is the third down the biggest thing y'all need to address?
Definitely. Yeah, we've and some of it is a, you know, we've, like I said, been incredibly explosive, but some of it has been certain situations in some games that's affected us some, where we just have kind of run the clock a little bit, so there's a few of them you can throw out that would probably help us a little bit, but we've not been as good on third down as we were really good last year on third down. We were incredibly efficient. We just weren't very explosive. So, you know, it's definitely an area that second half of the season we need to improve in, and I think we will. I think just kind of growing into who we are has been a part of it too. There's some missed opportunities, some penalties, some things like that have you know, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, all of a sudden now you're inefficient instead of efficient. So it's definitely an area we got to improve in.
talked a lot about kind of Trevor's personality. You know, he's just kind of like, okay, coach, you know, whatever you say. How much is that personality attributed to kind of his success over what has been a pretty dramatic season, at least the first 6 games?
Well, I don't think it's just this season. I mean, I just think that's just his DNA. That's how it's wired. I think it's attributed to his success that he had in high school. I mean, you know, you think about it today, these big time elite high school quarterbacks, they're under a lot of pressure from, I mean, this kid's been starting since the 9th grade. And so I think just that has served him well all the way through. I mean, you're talking about going the way they do this stuff now. You're all across the country. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody sees everything every single week. You got elite 11s and high stakes competitions. And, you know, so I think it has all of that plus his demeanor and just his DNA has helped him, you know, get off to a good start here.
Dabo from his press conference yesterday and looking ahead to this game with NC State, you know, I just think Clemson's going to roll them. We'll see what happens. I've been wrong before occasionally, not too often, but I think the Tigers will roll them.
Toot it.
To recruiting now.
Call it.
Let's begin with some basketball. Checked on Gerald Drumgoole, 6'5", Rochester, New York. Took an official to USC late September. Since then, Minnesota, Creighton, and Oklahoma have jumped in, giving him other schools to consider. But the Gamecocks also remain on his trail. He says they're still working him hard. He talks pretty much daily with assistants Chuck Martin and Bruce Shingler, and he said they're ready for him to commit. That's what he says. They're on him very hard. Right now, though, he's still kind of taking his time, being patient, wants to make sure he's making the right move. Plans to take an official to Minnesota in a few weeks. Creighton and Oklahoma might also get visits, but he says as of right now, South Carolina stands out the most because he said that's the only visit he's taken. Football coming in for a visit to Clemson. Saturday will be 2020 quarterback DJ Ukulele, Bellflower, California, rated the top prospect in his class. And this will be his second visit to Clemson. He was there in the summer for a camp session with Dabo Swinney, bringing his dad with him, a coach, one of his teammates. He just wants to see the game, get a feel for the atmosphere, wants his dad to see Clemson as well. Tigers are on him very strongly. Oregon is as well. He's been there. He also plans to visit Auburn. Also, he's got LSU, Alabama, Arizona State, and Oklahoma as other schools he likes. Through 8 games this season, according to Max Preps, he's thrown for 1,848 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Clemson target 2020 defensive back Luke Hill of Washington was offered by LSU. According to Paul Strelo of Tiger Illustrated, top Clemson center target Clay Webb of Oxford, Alabama, plans a return visit for the game Saturday. Clemson target offensive lineman Trevor Keegan of Crystal Lake, Illinois, has taken officials to Ohio State and Michigan. He'll take his final 3 to Clemson, Georgia, and Penn State. This he tells to the Michigan rivals side. He's going to Georgia November 10th. 2020 running back Joquavius Marks of Atlanta plans to be at Clemson Saturday. USC is also among his offers. 2020 athlete Dalen Smith, Fort Valley, Georgia, was at USC Saturday. Really enjoyed it. Has not been offered by the Gamecocks yet. Georgia Tech, Troy, Kentucky, Florida State, Vandy, Mercer, Harvard, and Princeton showing interest. 2021 athlete Trey Fields of Cornelius, North Carolina, was at USC Saturday. Pretty sure he's the brother of the Tigers' Mark Fields. Top of the hour. Back in a moment.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
All right, welcome back to Sports Talk. Do my eyes deceive me?
We have a treat today.
Are those two blinking lights, one representing Will Merritt, one representing the pastor of Payne, Corey Miller?
Surely you jest.
Let's check just to be sure. Hello, Mr. Merritt. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are y'all?
Oh, there he is. Pastor of Payne, how you doing?
I'm Will Merritt.
Good to have the two of you with us for a change.
Yes, sir.
Let's see if we can make this a regular the rest of the season as we hit the halfway point. It's good to have you with us. We always enjoy having you two guys with us. All right, Pastor, let's begin with you since the Gamecocks played last Saturday and lost another close one, a winnable game, fell behind, fought back, tied it up, had a chance, let it get away, couldn't pull it out. What'd you think about what you saw out there? Where's this team headed now heading into the second half?
Well, I guess the most disappointing thing for me, guys, is just your big-time players not stepping up and making big-time plays. I think when you look at South Carolina's roster from top to bottom, they're a team that has to have their quality players, guys that they lean on and depend on. They have to make plays. Those wide receivers, you must catch those passes. When you got to run a stick route, you got to make sure you get past the yardstick and get the first down. Don't come up short. Guys in secondary, when you got a chance to make the play, intercept the football, you got to intercept the football. And that's the problem we've seen with the Gamecocks. I mean, they're not a team that has this crazy amount of depth that they can put the next guy in if the guy's not performing, So these guys are the top-notch players, the Debo Samuels, the Brian Edwards, the Shi Smith, the Fentons. Those guys have to play good football in order for them to win. And they haven't done that for whatever reason. I mean, these guys have played big-time ball. They've been in the crowd. They've been in big games. They should not be shell-shocked because of that. But I'm having a hard time watching these guys who are supposed to be the leaders of your football team not stepping up and playing, a good football. Jake Bentley struggled early. We've seen this before. Same old story. A lot of energy. Ball sells on him. Make a couple of mistakes. But kudos to him. He settled down, came back and had a phenomenal second half to a lot of balls that were very much catchable. And I thought both the offense and defensive coordinators called a really good game. Players have to execute. We can sit here as a fan on Monday and try to dissect everything. Well, we should have did this easy. On Monday, when you see things develop, you saw the defense is doing it, you saw the offense is doing it. It's easy to sit back and say, yeah, I would have did this, and why didn't they call more of this? That's easy to do. But I thought they called a really good game. The players failed to execute the game plan, and that's the reason why they came up just short of winning a game against a quality top 20 football team.
Yeah, and Muschamp said on Sunday in his conference call that they put themselves in position, that he thought that they had a good game plan. It was a well-called game, and they put themselves in positions to make plays. So, fans like to blame coaches for everything, and you can blame them for some play calls or decisions made during a game, but you can't blame coaches when players drop passes and they're wide open, or a defensive back drops an interception and hits him right in the stomach, or your punt return man fumbles the ball on a punt return. Those aren't coaching things that people can blame the coaching staff for.
That's on the players. Players have to be held accountable. And again, these are not young guys that are making these mistakes. These are not freshmen. These are guys that have been here and played quality minutes for the University of South Carolina. These are guys that draft experts said going to be high-round draft picks. You got to make plays. You got to make those types of plays. I don't know if it's a lack of focus. I don't know if they're reading their own press clipping from the draft experts. I don't know what it is, but what I've seen, they're losing some change on that field the way they've been playing the first 6 ball games, and they need to refocus. They need to have a come-to-Jesus meeting and say, hey, we got to do the right thing. Guys, you're supposed to be the leaders. You got to step up and make plays, because if this season is going south, why not throw in younger guys? You're not going to win, 7, 8 ball games. You're going to have to start just putting some freshmen in there and let them play, because right now it's unacceptable. And Will Muschamp is being nice. He's saying the right things, but I can tell you a lot of disappointment in those veteran guys that are not playing the quality of football that they they're expected to play.
All right, Willie boy, let's talk Clemson. The Tigers have the Textile Bowl this week. NC State coming to town. The line is 17. I say too high. Coin says they'll cover. What say you? Do you think this is a little too high for Clemson just because of how close this series has been?
Absolutely, I think it's too high. I mean, if you look at this series in past years, I mean, this is a series that 36 times over the history of this program, over the Textile Bowl, has been decided by 7 points or less. The last 2 years, we have escaped by the skin of our teeth. One in overtime that we were given a gift 2 years ago, and then last year with the 7-point win. NC State just plays us tough, and NC State's got a good football team. You know, they're undefeated for a reason. They're ranked for a reason. They're well coached. I don't like the 17 points. I think that Clemson's getting the nod because it's at home, and they typically do extremely well at home. We have held serve and at home, and I think that the pundits are probably looking at that. But I don't like giving Clemson a 3-score vote of confidence going into the game, because I just don't think NC State, they're not going to read that. They know that they should have won 2 years ago. They should have won that ball game. Last year they had a great chance to win it. But Clemson, once again, found a way to win. I think Clemson will win the game because I think they're the better team. But I do think that the 17 points, when I saw that, was extremely high.
Will, one of the best chess matches I think I see in the ACC is Brent Venables against Elijah Drinkwitz. What does NC State do offensively? Is it a blocking scheme, or they give you a lot of window dressing? What makes it difficult for Clemson's defense to figure this offense out?
Well, first of all, think about what their strengths are and think about what our weaknesses are. Their strengths are they got a quarterback that's got the quickest release in the country. He stands in the pocket. He releases the ball. He is very accurate, a tall passer. What's our weakness? It's been in the secondary this year. I think that's probably what everybody's looking at, is that what is the matchup going to be like Ryan Finley going up against our secondary? The thing that I think that people are forgetting about NC State is they are massive up front too. I mean, these guys, they are big and strong on the O-line, and they're veteran guys. You know, they're 330, 315 across the board, and they're strong and they're well coached. So they can neutralize the strength of Clemson's defense. I don't think they will. I don't think they'll neutralize it for 4 quarters, because I don't think anybody in the country can neutralize all 4 of those guys for 4 quarters. But they can slow them down. They can slow them down long enough for their quarterback to be able to have vision in the pocket and to have that quick release that everybody loves about him.
Will Merritt and the pastor Payne Corey Miller with us here, the M&M boys on Sports Talk, sounding loud and clear. Corey, I want to ask you about this. We'll have to hold you over here. A break is coming up. These breaks come up so quickly. But saw where one of Ohio State's, of course, top players is going to sit out the rest of the season. He's been hurt, not going to try and come back and play this year, going to get himself ready for the draft. So here we go. It's not even November, and we're starting to see this. Is this going to be something more that we see? And let's take a look at, say, at South Carolina. Let's say the Gamecocks are just going to finish around 500, maybe sneak into a bowl game. You look at a guy like Deebo Samuel coming off a bad injury from last year, thinking about the NFL. Does a guy like that take the early exit and avoid the bowl game, or you see him sticking it out the rest of the way?
Absolutely not. I mean, I understand wholeheartedly from both doing it, because, I mean, some think he's going to be the first pick in the entire draft. I mean, he's going to be a top 5 guy, to say the least. So when you look at his situation and his injury, do you want to go back at the end of the year and get back on the field and re-aggravate that? No. Now you got to look at your future. I mean, you want to be a team player, but when you're talking about generational type money, you make the best decision from an individual standpoint. And I'm pretty sure Urban Meyer and his coach staff and his brothers in that locker room will understand his decision. He wouldn't be getting back to late in the season anyway. So I applaud him for making that decision. But when you talk about Deebo Samuel, listen, the way he's been playing, I mean, he better ask for 6 more games. I mean, because right now, if you can't catch the football, you can have talent. We saw the sample size last year for 2.5, 3 ball games. It was electric, and people started saying Heisman, which is very premature. You got to go out and play. You got to show those scouts that you can go out there and be that type of player that makes those dynamic catches. You can have rack run up the catch. And right now, through 6 games, I would have to say if I was going to stock on the rise or stock falls.
All right, hang on one second. We got to hit a quick break, and we'll come right back to you.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
More with Measures, Miller, and Merritt in a moment, but you had an update on a certain former Clemson quarterback.
Yeah, Kelly Bryant, of course, went to North Carolina this past weekend. He's going to go to Arkansas for a visit this coming weekend to be an official visit. And, of course, give him a chance to hook up with Chad Morris and see what that situation there looks like. I also was told today to look out for Oregon with Kelly Bryant, because the Oregon staff has offered a player at Wren High School, his former high school. There's a bit of a relationship there, and I think their offense out there might be suitable to what his talents are. Of course, they do have an established quarterback out there, don't they?
It hinges on whether or not Justin Herbert, who was draft eligible, whether or not he ends up going to the NFL or not. The guy behind him is a true freshman, so we'll see if they can maybe stave off the hierarchy there. Back to Corey and Will, and I want to stir the pot a little bit. All right, Will, are the Gamecocks a 3-3 team? Are they who they thought? Are they who you thought they were, or are they worse than you thought they were? Or are they better than they thought they were?
I think they're exactly where I thought they would be. I said it before the beginning of the year. I didn't think they would start off the year, 4-2, 5-1. I thought they would start off the year 500. I think they're a 500 team. I don't think that they're the worst team out there. But I listened to what Corey, his analysis of the players, and I have to agree with that. I mean, the playmakers aren't making plays. I agree. The skill position has been abysmal, but that's not the only issue that I see when you watch this football team. I don't think they get off blocks very well on defense. I don't think their offensive line is protecting very well. I think they have a quarterback that is not seeing the field very well. I think there's a lot of issues. I think the open day is coming at a very good time for them because I think they need to go back to the drawing board on some things. If not, this could be a really, really rough year when it's all said and done.
Corey, Clemson, NC State. Tigers favored by 17. I think they romp. I think Clemson, this NC State team, I think they're a fraud. Hadn't played anybody. I know they got some good, pretty pieces on offense, but they hadn't seen the defense like Clemson's, and I don't know their defense can stop Clemson's. That's why I think this time, despite the history that everybody's looking at, I still think that Clemson is going to roll them pretty good, and then that'll be it. They're just going to roll. The teams that lost this past weekend gives them some wiggle room in terms of if they finish undefeated and they don't have to worry about somebody sneaking past them into the playoffs. I mean, what do you see for Clemson the rest of the way here as we hit the home stretch?
Well, you're right. I totally agree with you on NC State. We really don't know who they are. I know Dabo is trying to make them out to be a top 5 team, but they're not. I mean, they haven't played anybody, and really the measure stick game for them would have been West Virginia, but that game got canceled due to the storm. So. And West Virginia lost last week, so who knows? I mean, I do agree that Philly is a really good quarterback. The offensive line, they got a couple of all-conference type guys up there, so they will play good and physical. It always is a close game, but at Clemson, I think Clemson will win. I'm not going to say it's a blowout. I really don't believe that. And I know they lost a lot on the defensive line because I still don't know who Clemson is. I still have question marks. I still think that they're not an elite team right now, not in my opinion, not from what I've seen the first few games. I mean, they're a good football team, but I think when you talk about playing top 10 teams, I think they're going to struggle. I really do. So I think they're kind of pampering the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. They're hoping that they continue this run game. That they've been dynamic the last couple of hours as they're running the football, and they try not to give him too much because right now you've seen he's prone to make mistakes. He's going to press a little bit too hard, and that's why I thought Kelly Bryant would have been a better option for them this season because he's going to make those mistakes. And it's going to show its ugly face. Before it's all said and done, mark my word, that quarterback position will show its ugly face, and it may end up costing them a game that they should not lose, and that could be the one this weekend.
All right, either you can answer this.
Well, Corey, I can tell you who we are on October 17th. We're a defeated team ranked 3rd in the country. We've won 3 on the road, 3 at home. We're averaging 530 some odd yards a game, holding opponents to 240 yards a game. I can tell you who we are. Now you can sugarcoat it and twist it however you want to, but I can tell you exactly who we are as we sit here on October 17th.
Well, hang on.
And you're playing all these little cupcakes. I mean, yeah, you can run up numbers. Wake Forest.
We played the same team y'all just lost to and beat them all in their house.
Now, right, yeah, you beat them. You shouldn't have beat them. I mean, a little luck there.
We shouldn't have beat them. So that's your excuse now.
So
you shouldn't have beat them.
You played a team like that, you should have lost. So you got fortunate there. So my point is, I agree with the Galloways, everybody else that says Clemson is a good team. They're not an elite team. And if you watch the game and know the game, you know these teams that they're playing are not really good. So, yeah, you can pad numbers. So when you look at it, you got question marks. You got question marks in the secondary. That same great defense torched for 330 yards in the second half. I mean, so Syracuse moved the ball up and down on this great defense. This defense has not played to the level, nor has that defensive front. They haven't been dynamic, 11 sacks like they did last year against Auburn, all these big time plays. You haven't seen that a lot of this defensive front. Yeah, they're making plays, but they have not been what they were last year.
But
so,
Corey, when you play a team that you should beat, that's what they're doing. They're winning by 60. Okay, they're holding. I mean, teams are averaging 2 yards a rush against them.
Now that was Wake Forest. Will, come on now, that was Wake Forest.
I said that.
I mean, exactly.
What you wanted to go win by 70? I mean, good gosh. I mean, when you play a team you're supposed to beat and they beat them by 60, what more do you want?
No, I was impressed by that 60-point win, but I'm just saying that was Wake Forest.
Corn thinks Wake Forest is great because they got a former Mr.
No,
Football in the
I'm
state
trying,
of South Carolina on the team.
I'm
so
saying
must be
keep
good.
that all in perspective because, I mean, no offense to Wake Forest, but still, it's Wake Forest.
No, you can have offense towards Wake Forest. They're not a great team. I agree with you. I told y'all it was going to be a blowout. I did not think it would be a close game, and it wasn't. It played out exactly like you would want a good team to go play. Go dominate them. When Alabama plays a patsy and they win by 50, everybody wants to hail them kings. But when Clemson plays a patsy and they go out and win by 60, you want to make excuses. It's garbage.
What do you guys think of the South Carolina quarterback being booed?
I thought I'm embarrassed by the South Carolina fan base. Absolutely embarrassed. I don't care where you are, what school you are. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. Boo pro players. I got booed. People got booed. That happens in the pros. You get paid millions of dollars. But when you're a high school athlete, come on. I mean, that was embarrassing. You may want to run neck in the game. I get it. I understand you want to win, but don't boo.
Nobody wants to win any more than Jake Bentley does. I promise you that.
I want to insert one thing. I was among the people booing Corey one day when he was with the Vikings.
Yeah, I boo him every Wednesday night.
I boo you because you can't get on the phone. You get a phone that works.
Well, one thing I would say
because he's on every media outlet everywhere. So Bart Dabo's cell phone next time.
One thing I would say to
that's what happens when you're undefeated and winning championships, Corey. You're in demand.
Yeah, one thing I would say to the fans,
and your media spends an entire week celebrating your 10th year anniversary.
If I'm the parents and I'm on the sideline with my son and you're recruiting him. And say he plays quarterback. Oh, is that what they do here? They boo their quarterback? I don't think we want you to go here.
Exactly. That's what you got to worry about. You got some top-notch recruits. I mean, wasn't Deion Sanders signing that day too?
And he had a fabulous time. I don't think that in talking to him, it didn't affect him. He said he had a fabulous time.
And maybe not, but I'm just saying you can't set that example. Man, as Will said, Jake Bentley, any of these college kids, whether it be Trevor Lawrence, those kids work their tails off. They want to win more than anybody. Those coaches want to win more than anybody. Sometimes things don't go well. I mean, I understand the urgency from the Gamecocks. Now, they've been faithful fans. I know I'm not speaking to the multitude here, but there's that fringe 10, the lunatics out of that booth. I'm saying I'm totally embarrassed.
You think it was mostly students? You think it was mainly students?
There was people on the alumni side and the.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean,
Will, do they ever boo at Clemson anymore? I mean, they have in the past. I've heard Clemson fans boo.
They don't lose enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think every fan base has booed at some point in time, but really, I mean, there hadn't been a whole lot to boo about in the last 5 years. So, it's been pretty easy to not boo. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a time or two where guys have booed, and I remember when we had an offensive coordinator that they could not stand him running bubble screens all the time.
I remember.
And I remember being in the broadcast booth and having to close the window of the broadcast booth because the boos were coming through our microphones.
I remember when y'all wouldn't
every fan base does it.
When y'all had a coach's show and they wouldn't take calls from the fans live, you had to pre-tape them because you were concerned about what they were going to say. So yeah, it goes with the territory. We got to run. Thank you, guys. Great segment. Be right back.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
All right, let's bring some sanity back to the airwaves as we head into another edition of SC Wild, starring Captain Billy Downer. Starting
lineup.
Captain Billy Downer of
the leadoff
Citadel
position.
fame.
The leadoff position.
Good to see you once again.
All-world from Citadel.
There you go. Hey.
And Sumter, or thereabouts. How's your world? How's the
My
world of
world's
great
great,
outdoors?
but I still think the spread's is
See,
too
you're going to
large
go
for
there. I'm
NC
trying
State.
to
I'm going to tell you,
steer us towards deer
the
and deer
entire
stands
room is
and
against
the
you.
sighting in your rifle.
The entire room, the entire internet.
I brought it up with everybody. From Zach Willis to the coach, the quarter, everybody brought it up with. Everybody says, "Oh, it's too high."
But see,
him.
Like I was just saying, it is a curse to have the unique insight that I have on things.
Blindness?
It's not a blessing, it's a curse.
Exactly. As we said before.
And to be right as much as I am, it really is. It's a heavy load to bear.
I think when we went up to Clemson, they did something with your head.
All right, we're going to see.
Did you fall?
We have a bet. I've given you Clemson. I'm sorry. I've given you State and 17, and we got a Pepsi writing on it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We're
on
Coke.
It's recorded. It's recorded now.
All good.
Whatever is available. All right, let's get to why you are here primarily, except we welcome you anytime to talk about anything. But sighting in your rifle and tree stand safety, the subjects for tonight.
Yes. So I thought I'd bring in a story happened to me in the last 2 weeks since our last show. I think it's a story that most guys that shoot, that hunt will they will identify with.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been saving up to buy a new rifle. Like a lot of guys, I've picked out a nice rifle. I was
just
excited about it. What now?
Why don't you just charge it?
Well, I did the layaway plan. Hey, I'm not afraid to say it. So I've been building up to buy this rifle. I bought a brand new Browning rifle.
You wanted to own the rifle.
I was all excited, bought a brand new Browning rifle. Got a Browning, never owned a Browning rifle. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I've got a great Leupold 50 millimeter scope that I've had for several years, but it's a great scope on another rifle I'm going to take off. And I'm going to put on this rifle. So I did that. Got a brand new set of D&Z rings. Folks that hunt know what those are. They're great solid rings that hold the scope on the rifle. Bore sighted it. Bore sightings, when you take that rifle, you take your scope on top of the rifle and they take a little instrument in the end of the barrel and it kind of portrays a target face. So you can take that rifle, you take the scope and you adjust it in the store.
Right. So it doesn't give you a distorted view, basically.
No, basically it takes it and gets the barrel lined up with the target. So when you go to the range, you're pretty much going to be on the paper, what they call it. So I started off at 50. You probably could start off at 25 for a lot of people. I started at 50. I felt pretty confident. Took my action out, looked down the barrel, and you could see the target clearly through there. So I knew my target was lined up. When I looked through the scope was lined up on the paper, perfect. Everything looked well. Shot once, shot again, made an adjustment. Shot again, made an adjustment. Shot it again, made an adjustment. Shot again, got mad. Shot again, got even madder. And then after a while, you just throw in the towel.
You were missing every time?
You were hitting the target, but you weren't getting where you were supposed to. The bullets weren't tracking with the scope. It wasn't adjusting right. I could not get it sighted in. Took a break, started with another rifle with a brand new Nikon BDC scope. 3 shots right on, perfect, adjusted it right in. So I knew it wasn't me. Felt a little better about it.
So the scope's fault.
Well, after another day of shooting again and a couple more shots and it going all over the place, you adjust it to the right, it go to the left. You adjust to the left, it go to the right. Finally figured out the scope was messed up. So the scope has what they call nitrogen filled. And I, with all the knowledge that I have learned in lifetime, learned something else. Did not know the nitrogen in that scope helps hold those crosshairs in place. So my scope was walking all over the place. So anyway,
is that because of the age of the scope? Maybe it hasn't been used,
but it's a lifetime guaranteed. Leupold is a great scope.
Just send it back in.
Send it back to the factory. We'll see what they do. Yeah. But the point of that is, I've heard of folks who have been frustrated trying to sight a rifle and couldn't sight it in. There's a lot of things that can cause your rifle not to sight in properly. Now, why do you want to sight a rifle? And obviously, you want to be able to go. When you go hunting, you want to be able to shoot where you're aiming.
You want
for a lot of things.
You want to hit your target.
You want to hit your target. No doubt about it. You want to make a good, clean, safe kill. You don't want your bullet to go somewhere you're not expecting it to go. So sighting the rifle is an important thing to do. It's important every year to take your rifle back to the range before hunting season. Just because it wasn't off last year doesn't mean something hasn't happened. Or the scope lost nitrogen, for instance, again. So take your scope out every year and sight it in. If it's been sighted at 100 yards, it's no problem taking it to 100 and trying it. But sometimes you got to start in closer and move out as you adjust.
It's interesting you should say that. I'm going to relate this to golf, for example. Say you don't play golf for a long time. You got a round coming up. You go to the driving range a day or two in advance to kind of get your game back.
Right.
Same thing for hunters, in that if you haven't been hunting for a while, your gun's been idle, a good idea to go to a range, get used to shooting it again, get your sight back in line.
Sure, absolutely. That's a very good analogy when it comes to shotgunning, particularly shotgunning with clay targets. If you haven't shot in a while, and just like with golf, you're going to need to practice and get back on the target. That's very good. As far as a rifle, though, rifles should stay on. There's no reason it should come off. You should lose your sight.
What about your touch? What about your skills?
You look at long distance shooting. That's the next thing. So if you get your rifle sighted at 100 yards, most hunters sight the rifle in for 100 yards, maybe an inch high to 100, so they're on at 200. Most calibers, 270, 708, 243, 6.5, 3 more. If you're a little bit high at 100, you're going to be right on at 200. Typically, now you start going past that, bullets start moving a lot more. So you have to adjust. But so the 100 yards is mainly where everybody sights in at. But if you start shooting longer distances, 300-400 yards, now you've got to look at a different type of scope. You might want to look at your rifle. If you got a floated barrel, which is a barrel that is not touching the stock necessarily, it's able to resonate and not lose. There's a lot of science to that.
300-400 yards is a long
Well,
distance.
there's people that get out there and they practice shooting 400, 500, 600 yards.
That's crazy.
And for those that do that, it's a lot of fun. And I did not ever understand the attraction to that until I was offered the opportunity out in Indiana to shoot on a 500-yard range. And I shot a 308 caliber rifle at 500 yards iron sight, which is no scope. Shooting at about probably, I'm going to say it was I don't know,
loosely
11 by, it's 2 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So 11 by 16 plate steel, and shooting that. And when you go pow, you wait,
and wait,
and you hear
ding.
And
if you hit
that is pretty impressive. Honestly, laying down prone position on the ground, shooting, and then having to wait to hear if you hit it. That was pretty exciting. Then you sit behind somebody. It's the first time I'd ever seen the bullet trail. You could see the bullet in the air actually going through the air.
Really?
You could actually tell them where they're going to hit before it hit. These are things you
see
watch the military
eye?
channel and all. You watch these guys, these long distance shots. You hear about the adjustments. The Marine Corps has done a great job with snipers. All the different military branches with snipers, though, that know this. But for the average hunter that doesn't shoot a long distance, it's pretty neat when you shoot out there long like that.
Were you able to see that with the naked eye?
No, you have to look at it through a pair of basically scopes or a spotting scope, so you can actually see the bullet in the air.
Wow.
And you can't just see the bullet, but you can see the shockwave going through there. It's really neat.
Yeah.
But so when it gets to long distance, good rifle, steady rest, quality optics. Typically, people pay $500-$600 for a rifle, then they want to go pay $200 or $300 for a scope. Wrong. If you pay $500-$600 for a rifle, it's time to put about $1,000 in a scope to get a really good scope that gives you solid warranty, solid optics, great light, so that in low light conditions, typically when we're deer hunting, you're
and good nitrogen also.
Yes, the nitrogen holds. Well, you want a solid scope that has a good warranty, but you want a scope that you can see well through, quality optics. A good rangefinder. If you're going to start shooting longer distance, you need a rangefinder to know your distance. Most people can't guess. So a nice rangefinder that you can plug in there with a laser, see where you're going, and then practice.
It is SC Wild here on Sports Talk from DNR Captain. Billy Downer is here. You have a comment or question about something he's talking about, 800-956-7266. You can also shoot us an email, talkback at sportstalksc.com. Hit us up on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. And we'll be back to talk about some tree stand safety information. Coming up next here on SC Wild.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We are back with Captain Billy Downer of DNR's SC Wild here on Sports Talk. So last Thursday, as part of our programming, we had the coach and the quarterback with us, the quarterback being Steve Tannehill, an avid hunter, as you probably know.
Absolutely.
He was calling us from his tree stand out in the woods hunting deer. I guess he was up in the tree stand. He said he's going to be up in the tree stand. Maybe
sure he was.
I mean, typically they're up in tree stands. They're not on the ground hunting deer, right?
That's what we're going to talk about. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he was talking to us, doing the interview from his tree stand. kind of a low voice, not to scare the deer. In fact, he pointed out that one was walking in front of him as he was talking to us, but it was too small to take down. So kudos to Steve for following the laws there, I guess. But anyway, what are your thoughts about tree stands and tree stand safety?
We're going to talk about tree stands for a minute because the cooler weather's here. Finally, a little bit of relief this past weekend. It got hot again for a couple of days, but it's going to be cool the next 7 days. So that will get deer fired up. This time of year typically is when we see deer. The last 2 weeks of October, first 2 weeks of November is always kind of when that rut falls and when our bucks start chasing does. Rifle season, gun season is open across the state now. So folks are going to be going out this weekend to go deer hunting. And you're right. Most people who deer hunt, particularly in South Carolina, not everywhere in the United States, but in the Southeast, most people hunt from an elevated position. Elevated position gives you a sight line above the animal, your scent above the animal, gives you a natural backstop when you're shooting your rifle into the ground. If you were to miss, gives you a natural backstop. But every year at the same time, people fall out of tree stands and they get hurt. So we've come up with some quick, simple steps to think about, kind of reminders for those of you that hunt. A couple quick reminders. Hope it attracts your attention, maybe rings something in the back of your head. You know, I need to think about that. But a couple things to be thinking about this year with tree stands, every year we should be doing. Always, number one, inspect your stand before the season. If it's already season, too many guys go out there and they wait till the cool morning like this coming this weekend. They go hunting, they hadn't even checked the stand yet. And they get up in the stand and the stand is even a metal stand will rust, bolts rust, things break, and the stand fails. The strap on the back's been eaten by squirrels, or it's just rotten over time.
Dart squirrels.
Yeah, they'll do it. And
I hate
the stand will flip. Can
we hunt squirrel?
Yes.
Okay.
And the stand will flip and throw people out, and they get hurt, broken limbs, and or worse. So inspect your stand before you go hunting. Take a good look at it. Do it in the daytime. Check it not only for any failures, straps and all. Check for wasps, things that will sting you. Plenty of guys that climb to the stand and get stung and jump out and get hurt, trying to get away from the wasp. And the third one on the inspection is the poison ivy, excuse me. Always make sure you're checking to clear those plants away. Don't be there early in the morning in the dark, climb up through a bunch of green, and you get in the stand and realize you just climbed through poison ivy. If you're like me, you'll be broke out all over.
I hate poison ivy.
So there's a couple of things. Just inspect your stand. Make sure, there's all kinds of stands out there. There's lean ups, ladder stands, there's lock-on stands, there's your climbers, and then there's your freestanding quad pods or tripod stands. All those have their own intricate things you need to look at. All your lean ups, your lock-ons, climbers, you need to check the bolts, check your metal, and check for straps. Make sure straps are in good shape. As far as your quad pods, don't forget about those. Make sure they're secured to the ground. Make sure you got them bolted, not bolted into the ground, but anchored in. Make sure they're anchored down because they will blow over in the wind. So anchor them down. Don't just put them up and leave them up without putting some kind of anchoring system in the ground. A lot of folks do a screw-in anchor, tighten it from the middle. That works great. But do some type of anchoring for your self-standing stands.
Let me ask you a quick question. With these tree stands, typically in a area where deer hunt is taking place, how far apart are they?
That's a good question. Most clubs, folks try to plan to be apart, several hundred yards at least. But, sometimes on a power line, for instance, you'll see 3 stands in a 5-pole stretch. Well, the poles might be 150 yards apart. The stands might be 300 yards apart each.
I know why I know why he's asking, because he doesn't want, if you kill a deer, you don't want to be out there and you have to,
that's part of it. I'm thinking to myself, you have to be aware where the other stands are. For example, you can't swing your rifle way over here and all of a sudden take the guy down the
that goes back into what we teach in hunter ed, safe zone of fire. You need to know where everybody else is hunting around you. But you also have to realize that sometimes you have to expect people to be where they're not supposed to be. Always be aware, know your target. We talk about identifying your target and what's beyond your target. But in any type of deer club, people ought to know where the stands are. They ought to be marked on a map so that everybody knows where everybody else is sitting. A lot of times people use washers and things with hooks to show where they're sitting. They put their name on a stand. They'll hang it on a stand, basically, on a big board to show where they're sitting so people know where everybody else is. That's a good safety rule. So always, let somebody know where you are at. We talk about it all the time. But back to tree stands for mentor. Inspect your stand. We talked about that. Number 2, use a haul line. We say use a haul line. What I mean by that is have a rope, string, something that you can lift, pull your rifle or bow up into the stand once you're safely seated. Never take your rifle strapped across your back or your bow in your hand and climb up the stand. If you're holding it in one hand, you've got one less hand to put on the ladder. And that's going to cause a problem. Cause you to fall.
Even if you've got it strapped behind your back.
Right, let me give you that. Strapped on your back. You got all 4 hands.
Yeah.
You got 2 hands and 2 feet.
Yeah.
You got everything touching. You got all your points of contact.
Right.
But if you slip and fall, and this has happened a lot, again, I see a lot of hunting incident reports. You fall back, that rifle's not going to bend. Your back is. That rifle's across your back, it's a piece of steel back there. And you fall on that has broken backs before. That's why you should always lift your rifle up after you're safely seated. Use the haul line, lift the rifle up, barrel down, into the stand once you're safely
Do people actually do that, though?
Yes,
the
they
haul
do.
line?
Yes.
You do find that to be
yes,
the case?
when I was a teenager, I hunted with a club where men were using those before they were popular. Just a smart idea. Third thing, we always suggest this, use a fall restraint system. Wear a fall restraint harness and use a lifeline or similar type system when you're hunting from a tree stand. Fall restraint system basically is a tree stand safety vest. Wear one of those vests. But for that vest to work, you really need to use, at best, you need to use a lifeline system. A lifeline system is a rope that ties around the top of the tree above your seated position and then goes all the way down the side of the stand and connects to the bottom of the stand. You tie it around the bottom of the stand. You clip into that with your safety vest. You clip in with your safety line with your clip.
Little carabiner action.
Carabiner, exactly. With a Prusik knot. The Prusik knot, P-R-U-S-I-K. Prusik knot's an old climbing knot, been used for a long time.
Can you tie it?
Yes. Yes, it's about takes about 2.5 feet of rope. Flip around.
Yeah.
You wrap that around. The Prusik knot's on these lifeline systems. It allows you to clip in.
The man if he can tie a knot.
The knot can
I asked him
slide.
to tie a Prusik knot.
The line slides up and down the rope freely when you're climbing. So you can, as you're climbing, keep running that rope up. But if you fall, its design is when you fall, it locks.
The Prusik
The knot will tighten up and prevent you from sliding down the rope. So in other words, you are connected to that safety line from the time you leave the ground until the time you step back on the ground. The only way you do that is by using a lifeline. So those of you that hunt in tree stands, if you haven't looked up a lifeline, look up a lifeline by Hunter Safety Systems or Muddy. A lot of the different the different systems out there, different tree stand safety vests have a lifeline type system. But
Were you an
use that
Eagle
system.
Scout?
I was not an Eagle Scout. But remember this, guys. Hunting's a hobby. Nobody wants to get seriously injured while hunting, which could require them to take days off from work.
Yeah.
So remember, hunting should be fun and safe. This week, if you go and climb a deer stand, make sure you're wearing a safety harness, using a lifeline system. You decide to shoot,
I'm going to quiz Steve Tannehill tomorrow night to see if he follows all the guidelines.
I was star. How far did you make it on Scouts?
I made it to Webelow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So you really weren't a scout at all?
No.
Man.
I was tenderfoot.
Too much hazing going on.
Really? That's
What did you make?
I was a star. Two away from Eagle.
Yeah.
Hey,
why am I not surprised by that?
too much hazing going on. How about that? And then I went to Citadel.
Did you actually go out in the woods and do stuff, or you did this at home?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
I was in the woods.
Okay.
My dad
Captain?
used to lament about me. I used to take him on all the crappy
All right,
trips.
so
Well, he was
folks,
probably trying to
remember,
lose you.
remember, 17 points is the line. That's what he's holding to.
Have a good night. See you tomorrow.